Welcome back.
Abuja. Wake up.
This is Citizen FM 93.7, and you are listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. And it's time for our news review. Well, the first story we would like to look at is return stolen assets to original victims. This is coming from Awal Rafsanjani, and this is what he is telling the corruption or the anti-corruption agencies. Let me give a background to that before I'm joined by Lawrence Umwete, the Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative and Advocacy Center, CISLAC. His name is Comrade Awal Musa Rafsanjani. He's charged governments, anti-graft and law enforcement agencies on the African continent to ensure that the original victim of stolen assets are given back the assets that have been stolen from them, and as well as their states. Now, he was speaking at a global South Forum for Asset Recovery in Nairobi, Kenya. And he doubles as the head of Transparency International Nigeria. And he decried the practice of marginalizing the original victims of stolen assets when the assets were stolen from in the first place. And he said that the case between the Nigerian government and the Delta State government, as well as the mismanaged COVID-19 funds in Kenya, are good examples of this. And he says that if not properly checked, the assets risk being relooted by officials who do not mean well for their country. So joining me is the head of CISLAC, Ahmed Rafsanjani. Good morning, Ahmed, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
All right, so just looking at the statement that you made, or the presentation you made all the way there in Kenya. So how bad is the situation? Are you saying that there is a trend of people who have been looted from not receiving their funds back?
Yeah, thank you very much. We have observed that many countries have returned or have gotten the looted assets back to their countries, and the actual original victims of the citizens that have been deprived, in the first place, opportunity to enjoy these stolen assets. When the federal government in their respective countries, particularly Nigeria and Kenya, when they receive these funds, they're supposed to turn this into the respective states. For example, in Nigeria, Delta State, government have not been, given the money that federal government collected on behalf of Delta State, money that was diverted by their former leader.
Mm-hmm.
Something also in Plateau State, something also in Bayelsa. It's been always like that.
So, but I want to take you up with the Delta State situation. I mean, when the government was trying to get these funds back, there was a statement by Delta State that their money wasn't missing. So if they don't want to admit that their money was missing, we're not sure whether it's to protect the person accused of looting these funds. On what basis does the federal government now return this money to them?
An individual person who's supposed to be speaking for the students, the institution of Delta, if he connived or misbehaved or did not have the fact, that does not mean that you should ignore the obvious. Everybody knows that, for example, James Ibori is from Delta, and this money is traced to him, and therefore there's no magic, there's no any way anybody would say that the money is no longer a Delta State government. So if the former governor, who was a sitting governor and he was trying to cover up for James Ibori, we will not take his word, because we know that based on investigation, this money was stolen from Delta State, and therefore Nigerian government also collected this money on behalf of Delta State. So it makes no sense, because one individual from Delta State had mentioned that it is not Delta money, whereas investigation and evidences are proven to see that this money actually indeed belonged to Delta State and Delta people. So federal government cannot rationalize based on those, uncertainty information coming from, an individual from the state, no matter what his position was, because evidence shows that this money was coming from Delta states. You cannot simply because of the statement made by, somebody, now deprive Delta state people from the money that was meant for them, what was to help in terms of healthcare system
in the first place. You
Yeah.
also mentioned Plateau State. I'm assuming you are referencing the ecological funds that former Governor Joshua Daria was convicted for. Or which other funds? Or are there any others?
So if you remember, Joshua Daria of Plateau State, which was the basis that he was even sent to jail. Also, there were a lot of stolen money, that
they claim to recover, but those monies have not been returned to the states, as you say.
So the point is that there were a number of recoveries done locally and internationally, and what we are saying is that the anti-corruption agency, when they collect these assets, they must make sure that they return it back the owner. In this respect, the owners and the citizens, the indigenous in those states are the beneficiary. They are the victims that have been deprived because the money in the first place was meant to cater for the states and the indigenous in those states. And some wicked public official that batted this asset or these funds, and therefore deprive the citizens or the indigenous of those states, from having, opportunity to, to have an improved education, improved healthcare system, improved infrastructure, and what have you. So that's why we're saying that you cannot recover this money and you now keep it to yourself. And then again, there's no explanation on what we're doing with the money.
So basically, if I understand you correctly, we have a situation where over the years, state commissioners or state attorneys general, state governors have been investigated and assets have been recovered from them, and these assets are purportedly from monies that have been allocated to the states and therefore statutorily belong to the states. But at the end of the day, after the recoveries, the states do not get these assets back. The state governments do not get these assets back.
Yeah, so this is a huge concern, and we cannot say we are fighting corruption. You recover from these thieves, and then the next round of official thieves that batted, or corner this, recovered money. That is why we keep on saying that even at the national level, you have multiple agencies that are recovering money or assets. You have custom, you have NLD, you have EFCC, you have ICPC, you have police. You have quite a number of these agencies in your code of conduct. You cannot have these multiple agencies collecting this asset, and yet there's no uniformity of giving electoral data or information where you can go and see, okay, this is what we have, collected, and this is what we have made use of. That is why we are insisting that we must do everything possible in order to ensure effective utilization and management of recovered assets. You cannot recover from this set of criminals, then another set of official criminals also, make disappearance of those recovered assets. This is not acceptable, and that's why civil society, who have been in the first place, been the one going around all over the world advocating for the return of this asset, to African countries, they are now insisting that you cannot marginalize those who have been deprived in the first place.
In the first place. Okay, my last question to you. You recommended that there should be a legal framework for the management of recovered assets. What does CISLAC recommend?
So, CISLAC over the years, having noticed this right from Obasanjo has recovered and received this, and yet, all these funds, no tangible explanation on what has been done with them. No physical, evidence to show what Nigerians have benefited from all these Abacha loot and other looters that have looted money, that the money or the asset had been returned to Nigeria. So that is why we have been advocating and insisting that we must have a legal framework that will manage recovered asset and also specifically show clarity on how coordination should be, so that no agency is on its own alone on this matter, but they collaborate, they share information, and you can physically verify what custom collected, what LD collected, what police collected, what ICPC or EFCC collected. Until we are able to have that transparent process, it will be difficult to instill confidence, even from those countries that are holding this asset, and of course Nigerians who have been deprived from this by their wicked leaders. This coming also at a time when you see more leakages are happening. Nigeria said that is fighting corruption, yet every day you see people are engaging in a grand corruption. Just over the week, a student was with pound sterling, or dollar in apartment, and a wicked Nigerian who, even though the identity of the person has not been, but you could see that it is not an ordinary person. It is somebody who has access to state resources,
Okay. Thank you very much. We have to leave it there, but very grateful that you took time to speak with us on this, very pressing matter.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, well, we are still on our newspaper review, and Lawrence Umwoite is here, so we will be looking at some of the other trending stories. This is Citizen FM 93.7, and you are listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is Citizen FM 93.7, and you are listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. My name is Stanley Bentu, and the time is 7:25. We're looking at the big stories trending today. And, let's go through the headlines. Debate. Presidential candidates lambast federal government for corruption and insecurity. This is a story that was published in The Punch. Another headline is coming from this day, a Rise TV presidential town hall series. I will support the creation of state police, says Omeadi. And we also have from The Nation, APC, Tinubu remains a solid, reliable candidate. This is coming from the governing party. Then the Daily Trust has the story, why the federal government may not implement Oronsaye report before 2023. We'll find that out. And Nigeria's trust is my most important asset, says Peter Obi. And this is according to the story in the Vanguard. And on that note, I introduce to you the head of news at Citizen FM, Lawrence Umwoite. Good morning, Lawrence.
Good morning, Stanley. Good morning, Stanley.
All right, well, you've heard the headlines. Let's dive straight into it. From The Punch, the presidential candidates of the African Action Congress, that is the AAC, Omoyele Sowore, Action Democratic Party, Yabagi Sani, and the Social Democratic Party, Adewale Adebayo, and the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Mr. Peter Omeadi, on Sunday night promised to retool the security architecture to address the insecurity in the country. Now, they also vowed to adhere to the rule of law and eliminate poverty. while focusing on the development of the education sector. Now, the candidates stated these during the Arise TV town hall for presidential candidates, which was held in Abuja. Now, the debate was organized in collaboration with the Center for Democracy and Development and various media organizations. So, according to the candidates, intelligence agencies were not doing enough in the area of intelligence gathering, and Showore said that his government would tackle banditry if elected in the 2023 election, and he said fighting banditry and insurgency was not rocket science, and if intelligent people were in charge of the security agencies. Let me just go through them. AAC candidate alleged that the Department of State Services was not doing enough in terms of tackling the security challenges facing the country. He said, and I quote, "I was detained by the DSS for 5 months and they were watching Big Brother Nigeria reality show instead of collating intelligence and analyzing and using that to stop terrorists and bandits. So we don't have a commander-in-chief of the armed forces as of today." That's his view. What we have, according to him, is an arranged system of security in which everybody is doing what he likes. Okay. Well, first of all, let's get the elephant out of the room, the Big Brother Nigeria allegations. If this is true, and nobody's saying that it is, but this is what the candidate says that he saw. It's not a good look when you are at work and you are watching Big Brother Nigeria. It just doesn't look good.
Well, Stanley, I think it's not as simplified as Omoyele would make it look like.
Before we get there, I know the reason I wanted to take on the Big Brother is because you see this a lot in corporate offices, that people think it's just okay, it's harmless, it's not. But I think when you're in a corporate environment, you might, and this is not to affirm that what he says is true. This is what he said during the debate.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's not only that in some other offices, even in the hospitals too, because I had a personal experience a few years ago. That was not Big Brother. That was, I think, the opening ceremony of the CAF championship in Nigeria. One of those ones that Nigeria hosted with Ghana or something like that. So there was this opening ceremony, and we had to rush in a colleague at night in one of the general hospitals, and everyone was gathered in the waiting room, what was supposed to be a waiting room for the hospital, and they were really, really catching fun and not listening to people who had an emergency and stuff like that. So I think it's a general malaise in public run.
But let's also get down to the major issue. Solving security is not as easy as these candidates would like to present it.
Certainly.
There are so many complexities. There are compromises. The Nigerian security architecture is a behemoth. How, it's you can't just say, oh, here it is, and wish it away. There are constitutional reviews that you have to do. There are reforms you have to carry out. There are documents that are already on the table that you have to read. So I know politicians would feel, oh, say anything to get into the office, but there is an oversimplification here, as you were trying to point out.
Exactly, and you see, let's look at the facts first. The fact one is that everyone is on the same page that our security officials are not doing enough, and that's not just Nigeria. The moment you think you've done enough, then there's no need to be around again. People strive, institutions strive to better what they are doing, and so that's for the DSS, police and all. Yes, they are not doing enough because of a lot of other reasons, funding and so many other things, but to give the impression that they are not really working, we don't have a commander-in-chief and stuff like that, it's not really the case. If there is one security institution in Nigeria I respect, is the DSS. Because when I was covering the defense and the DSS, I had some access to some of their operations that were not classified. And you know that, yes, they have a way of doing things without a lot of people knowing. The only ones you see are people who go on operations that you see them with their branded jacket and stuff. That's the only time you see them outside. But a lot of the time, they are doing stuff that people don't get to know about. So they prevent a lot of things that don't get into the media. You see, they are not in the habit of holding press conferences and stuff like so. When it comes to the issue of security and intelligence gathering, a lot go on. And I'm sure that most of our political leaders, when they get into office and they are now given access to some classified information and intelligence,
then they realize the magnitude of the problem.
They realize that, oh, this is not...
and this is the thing. This is my problem with oversimplification. Oversimplification leads to excuses.
Exactly.
Because if you were now to win the election, the next thing will be you will start giving excuses once you're in office. So I think it's better you acknowledge the complexity and difficulty of the problem, because I have seen different assessments of Nigeria's security situation from different countries, whether it's the United States, the UK, Germany, and none of them has trivialized this problem. So for candidates to come and say, this is not rocket science, you can do this, I don't believe that it's not rocket science. I think it's a very complicated situation that requires an iron will, a determined government, and maybe we need to hear more about what you need to do. Maybe what we need to hear is about a reform of the criminal justice system, which again is another complicated situation, because the criminal justice system starts all the way from the police to the court systems, to the prison systems. It's probably not something that you will be able to do over a 4-year period with all of the other problems that you're going to be facing. Because don't forget, you're going to have ASU breathing down your neck, polytechnics breathing down your neck, civil servants breathing down your neck. All of these.
And I think, Stanley, what our security chiefs and intelligence community can do, because it's done in other parts of the world, when elections come like this, there are some level of security clearance they give to some of these candidates, depending on what you're contesting for. And sometimes they give them briefing, security briefings, intelligence briefing, depending on their classification, so that you have a general overview of how things work, not necessarily the serious ones. So, for example, presidential candidates, the 18 of them, once a month, they are taken into a facility and given a security briefing of what exactly, not the details, just a general outlook. They do it to media men, they do it to editors, people who are high up there in the media, and they give you some level of how things work, so that when you are doing report, when you're looking at the report of your reporters, and you have an idea, if the reporter is out of line, you say, no, I know how these things work. This is not just this, and it guides you. So that when you're making promises, when you're campaigning, you know that yes, it is not black or white. Everything is not black or white, especially security issues, just like it's more complicated. So they have this general knowledge of how things work in the system, and it prepares their mind, so that at the end of the day, if you're fortunate to get to the office, you don't just, it's not that you are just thrown in and you just become so shocked. You already have a little knowledge of some level of how things work.
All right, well, we will open up this conversation early enough. I did promise that last week. This is Citizen FM 93.7, and you're listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. My name is Stanley Bentu, and, well, if you want to join this conversation, you have comments, you can call us on 0903 2229 797 or 0808 2222 037 or 0818 2222 205. We would be very happy to hear what you have to say. You could also send us WhatsApp messages to these numbers, so that we will be able to share with Abuja your views and opinions. Lawrence Omoite is here, and we are looking at the major stories making the headlines. Still on the presidential debates, we have this story from This Day newspaper, Arise TV presidential town hall. I will support the creation of state police, says Umadi, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress Alliance, Grand Alliance, All Progressives Grand Alliance, rather, ABGA. He said that if elected, he would work to create state police to help tackle the worrisome insecurity in the country. Now, speaking at the ongoing town hall, he said that he will support, let me take this quote from him. I support the creation of state police by amending the country's constitution. And also, he wants to establish local vigilante groups to deal with insecurity in rural areas. And he also said if elected, he would recommend the inclusion of military training for the NYSC members. Well, I think there is a little bit of physical training that goes on that is almost akin to military training, because you learn to march, and you also learn to, there's the man of war training with the drills, every morning. So maybe he wants to intensify that. If you're from Israel, you have to do 1 year.
Maybe it's talking
and
about
you don't even have to be a degree holder. Even if once you reach a certain age, you have to go into the army and do 1 year. And they use that as a tool for national mobilization, because if everyone is taught sacrifice from a certain age, maybe the age of 15, 16, 17, then they will begin to, it comes a little bit easier. So it's an interesting idea that he puts forward about the military training. But state police, though, is not as easy as it may appear on the surface, because there are a lot of banana peels connected to the subject.
Well, I'm glad the way he said he's going to support and he's going to work with others, National Assembly and everything. Sometimes you hear others say, no, when I come in,
I will create state police. And a president cannot create state police. Has no power to do so.
It's a constitutional issue that you have to take into, and you know how it is. With over a year now, we've been trying to make some alterations on the constitution, and we've still not gotten there. It's still stuck at the state level to make returns to the National Assembly. So it's not always very easy. And so if he's talking about working with others, fine. I think that's good. Reaching out to the National Assembly and the States Assembly, and then the governors and everything, is something that will require a lot of work. But this one may look a little bit easier, because a lot of governors are in support of state police, so they may influence their state assemblies positively towards agreeing to that. It's like unlike the local government autonomy, which has been a very challenging one now, despite the obvious advantages, but because of perceived interests at the state level, is still stuck.
And I'm looking at all of the details that would have to be worked through when it comes to state police. First of all, there are all the debates in the National Assembly. Then you have to pass that in a constitutional amendment bill. Then it goes to the state governments. You have to get at least 2/3 of the states to approve of that. And then, of course, the bill has to be harmonized. Then you also have to work out the funding. What is going to happen to the federal police, what's going to happen to the state police, how are the two going to interact with each other. All right, well, let us take this call.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
My name is Ahmed from Apple.
Ahmed from Apple?
Yes.
Okay, welcome, Ahmed. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say something about this DSS issue you are talking about. You see, some time ago, I found this DSS people joining environmental task force, sending a bag of villas. At Tuesday to precisely, they were pursuing pure water hawker. I said, DSS is a well-respected, like Mr. Norris put it. I've not dealt with them for quite some time now, and their work is so special. And their agency that is not be found among environmental, what are they doing with environmental? Why should they be cajoled in pursuing environmental, pursuing pure water seller?
Okay, Ahmed, are you sure they were DSS agents? How did you know? Because they usually don't wear uniforms.
I saw them at Tuesday to at the back of windows, about 2 of them holding gun. And when they saw pure water, how can they begin to pursue them?
Ahmed, how did you know that they were DSS officers?
Yes. So they should be called to order. They should be made to know their job. So DSS is not it's a well-respected organization. They should not be found among all these environmental pursuing pure water. It's not right.
Oh, all right.
Ahmed, okay, I may not take your word for it, because it's difficult to establish.
We will address that, but let's quickly take this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. This is Kennedy.
All right, Kennedy, where are you calling from today?
Calling from Carol.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hello, Ken. Good morning.
Thank you. Talking about DSS, there are certain things that Nigerians should know. Like the caller just said that they saw a DSS person chasing pure water. So it's possible. he can be doing that too to get an information. Are you with me?
Okay.
And then talking about you see them watching is it a Big Brother Nigeria? Yes, somebody was there. They could be doing that to like divert, the person's attention, thinking that they are not reading something, but they are reading something on your face. So things about security are things that you don't just see them do and then you pass out information. They may be distracting pure water sellers to get an information, So it's not just people that you can just condemn easily. Whatever they do, they have reasons for doing it. Except you go deep, you may not know. So Nigerians should understand that DSS are not soldiers. DSS are not just these police people or vigilante people that they just go straight to do things. There are easy ways to do things, to get information, and to act appropriately. Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right.
Thank you,
Kennedy. Well, it's an interesting point that Kennedy raises about the Big Brother night. It could be a distraction. Let me make you seem, because I know that investigators have all kinds of creative ways to do that. But the question of DSS chasing people on the streets, I know it's not part of their mandate, and they would not be, except if they're in tactical gear, carrying out a raid. You probably would not know that this is a DSS officer.
Exactly. So that was what I was asking you, Wes. How do you establish that these were operatives of the DSS?
Of the DSS. How do you establish that? All right, let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Could you tell us your name and where you're calling from, please?
All right. My name is Mr. Dave. Good morning, Mr. Law.
Good morning, Dave.
Mr. Dave. Okay. Well, Dave from Central Area. Welcome, Dave.
Yes. Thank you. I don't know. I want to ask Law. Law, when is Kem coming back?
Anytime soon. Don't worry. You will hear from her very soon.
It's all right. I want to quickly react on the issue of presidential debate. I saw a debate that Channel Television organized yesterday for NNPP. Then Arise News, they are organizing their own. I think if we want this thing to be more authentic and effective, all the media house should come together and form a single debate. Rather than each of the channel will organize their own, AI to organize their own, Arise TV organize their own. That makes it of no relevant. It makes it, that is why people are not even attending the debate. So we should make it more authentic by coming together and form a one-body debate. And also, I want to know if debates are meant only for journalists or for general public. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Dave. I think Dave raises a very critical point. We have all of these debates. It was really awkward yesterday when you have the channels, television having their own set of debates, and then you have the other one on a rise. It's almost as if the media is in competition. So it gets to a point where it might be a little bit much. But right now there is nothing regulating any of this. Exactly. So it's going to be very hard to process. But now that you had two debates that were literally going on simultaneously, so there is no way that you can probably watch both of them. So do you think Dave has a point that maybe media houses should generally come together and synchronize all of this? But then we also still have the perennial problem of those who are participating in debates, or the major stakeholders still not showing up for debates.
Well, for me, I think pending when we'll have any kind of legislation to back that up. For now, you can't force anyone to appear before any debate. And two, you cannot regulate it for now because there's no law. So I think candidates would likely attend where they think they will make the most out of it in terms of their chances. That's how politicians roll. They know where they need.
Or not even at all. Because there is this statistical fact that every candidate that has skipped debates has gone on to win the election.
Well, yes, that's a fact.
Starting from President Obasanjo, 1999, 2003. There weren't even any debates. Yaradua did not attend the debate. President Buhari attended a previous debate, but the election in which he won, he didn't attend the debate. So, President Goodluck Jonathan didn't attend the debate where his other competitors attended, and then he attended one where he was all alone on the NTA. It's almost as if you're more likely to win if you don't attend a debate.
Well, maybe it's just, I can't say it's a coincidence because it's happened so many times. But I think,
this is 22 years, Lawrence. It's a pattern.
If politicians know or if they feel that debates are important to their chances of winning an election, they will turn up.
So the evidence is showing that these debates are not consequential.
So that's it. And
if all of the candidates who didn't attend ended up winning, it shows that you are more likely to...
So as a candidate, why would you go ahead and do things that are not consequential to your chances of winning? You'd rather do something else during that time.
All right. Well, still Citizen FM 93.7. You're listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. The lines are still open. You could join us with your opinions on 0903 22 22 9797 or 0808 22 22 037 or 0818 22 22 205. You could also send us WhatsApp messages. We'll move on to the next story now. We have this one coming from the Nation newspaper. APC. Tinubu remains a solid, reliable candidate. So the political party now backing its candidate. The APC yesterday warned opposition parties and their agents to desist from spreading fake news capable of tarnishing the image of its standard bearer, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The campaign council described the former Lagos State governor as a solid and indestructible candidate, stressing that any campaign of calumny against him cannot help the cause of the opposition. Also, yesterday, the Arise Television apologized to Tinubu for airing a false report that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, had commenced investigation into a case of criminal forfeiture against him. However, despite the rebuttal by INEC and apology by Arise TV, the People's Democratic Party has insisted on the fake news and called on Tinubu to withdraw from the race. Its publicity secretary, Debo Ologunagba, said that the APC candidate is ineligible owing to the purported indictment. So, still a lot of trading of accusations, allegations, mudslinging.
Yeah, Stanley, I think these are trying times for the media. Those of us in the media need to be very circumspect, need to be very careful with information at our disposal. I saw that story flying around. I think Saturday or thereabout, and I just simply ignored it because all I needed to do was just to put a call to the purported issue of that press release, and I just realized that it didn't come from them. So these are, politicians will do a lot to gain advantage, to discredit opponents and rivals and so many other things. They don't have official departments to do this. But you and I know, when you have a campaign council, there are a lot of things that come under a campaign council. There are groups, departments that are entirely focused on discrediting the opponent. Consistently in the social media, propaganda, they do a lot of things. So the media needs to be very, very careful so that you don't get used by these politicians. They all do it.
And it's very easy.
It's very easy, and you end up with a bloodied nose and you come out with an apology. That's one of the worst things for a media house, to issue an apology for a story you carried.
Especially for, for a rise, which, recently has been rising.
Exactly. So
to be caught up in this. All right. Well, I think we have a WhatsApp message here. This one is coming from an unknown number. Mr. Lawrence, well done. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Anonymous.
Mr. Anonymous, because it doesn't have any name. But you can still call us on 0903 22 29 797, 0808 22 22 073, and 0818 22 22 205. All right, let's move on to the next story. Why the federal government may not implement the Oronsai report. This is a story that was before 2023. This is a story that was published in the Daily Trust. I'm quite interested in this. With less than a year to the end of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, there are indications that the report of the Steve Oronsaya Committee on the Rationalization of the Federal Civil Service may not be implemented about 11 years after it was produced. Daily Trust reports. Now, despite constituting several committees to review and evolve strategies for its implementation, experts, among other factors, blamed the absence of political will to implement the reports. Now, pundits say fear of political consequences or taking decisions that may likely see people losing their jobs at a time of the rising cost of living and with general elections around the corner would make it difficult for the government to go ahead with the plan. So, according to the Daily Trust, against the backdrop of increasing cost of governance, the government in August of 2011, just giving background, inaugurated the Steve Oronsaya Committee on Rationalization of Ministries, Departments, and Agencies of the Government. Now, the committee submitted its report on the 16th of April 2012, which is 10 years ago, and recommended a reduction of the number of MDAs from 263 to 161 to reduce the cost of governance in Nigeria. Now, this is almost like being between a rock and a hard place. We all know in our heads what needs to be done. We all know in our heads that when you have a government system that consumes 80% or 70% of your revenue to run its bureaucracy, then we have a problem. But the moment we implement a way to cut down this cost, it now has other political implications, political consequences. I think we talked about this some time ago. We saw even what happened in Kaduna State when El Rufai tried to reduce the number of teachers, and even Labour got involved in that situation. So if you say you're going to now merge and do this and that, and at the end of the day, it's going to end up with people losing their jobs. It's not as straightforward as we would like to think it is.
You see, I was under no illusion from day one, even when the report was submitted, I think a few months ago to the president. I knew that nothing will be done. It's going to be pushed to the next administration. It's just logical. And the next administration will also play politics the first time. And push because just like you said, the political will is not there. And any president who would want to do that would seriously need to do a lot of mobilization.
What is political will?
Well, it's...
By your definition.
Political will is doing what needs to be done without looking at the political side of governance.
But if you do what needs to be done and it leads to the collapse of your administration and it's not done anyway.
If I don't think this case it may lead to the collapse. It's just the way it will be implemented. That's it. Stanley, let's look at the pros and cons. Government is complaining that we don't have enough funds coming in. 2, the running cost is rising so much. What do we need to do? If it was a family, for example, and the father decided to take some actions, I need to save the family from collapse. We need to make sure that the children will have food to eat. They will need to go to school. Let's cut down on our expenses. Instead of having 5 cars in the compound, we sell off 3 and we just use 1 or 2. Instead of the children going to high-profile schools where they pay dollars.
It sounds rosy when you say it.
No, I'm just
You're
saying.
probably talking about thousands of people who are going to be out of work.
But Stanley, Stanley. No. Stanley, that's perhaps even the lesser consequence, because if it's done right, the compensations can be paid. When people always quarrel when you just decide to say, okay, you lay off thousands of workers and nothing is done. But when adequate compensations are paid, it may be huge in the short run, but in the long run, if you compare what you'll be paying in the next 10 years, and compared to that.
Right, let's listen to this call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, son.
All right, thank you for joining us. Could you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Heidi. I'm calling from Bentu.
Heidi, good morning. Where have you been?
Good
all
morning,
these years?
Heidi.
I've missed you, Heidi.
I missed you too, that's true.
Please go ahead.
So at last, came and joined the Jaffa train.
No,
No.
Kemi will be back.
Okay, on the issue of almost target report,
Yeah.
The former president Olusegun Obasanjo just tried it. For it was there to find our current reward, right sizing. But at the end of the day, the thing could not go further. Because most civil servants that were downsized then were later recalled back because of the key and because of the effect of their rationalization, because of the effect on the government first did, the government first that. But this oral science report, I really want the incoming government to look at it critically. One, it will help the federal government. Then number two, it will make for adequate preparation for our budget. But Mr. said political will, you are asking the meaning of political will, right? The political will, what I think government should do is they should cut down on the cost of governance. My dear brothers, the cost of governance is high. We don't talking about how Nigeria has so many, their debt of funds and whatever, but look at the way some of our constitutions are living. At least they are living another world entirely from Nigeria. How much is the civil servant saying? 30,000 minimum wage. What about other people that are sending millions every day? Every day, you see a lot of people, any politicians having many millions every day.
Yeah.
So government needs to be very careful. Incoming government needs to be very careful. And if they are very sincere about their own thing, civil servants are even tired of working with the government. But the fear of not getting their gratuity on time is what is keeping some of them in the service.
All right.
So that is just my submission. If government can make provision that, okay, this is a bulk, that you will not go through all these figures of going through PSA, going through PENCOM, whatever. You want to even leave the service. See, 70% of federal civil servants who really want to leave the civil service.
All right.
Because for now, there is no clerk in the civil service, no secretary in the federal civil service. As a deputy director, assistant director, you will do your job, no secretary, no clerk. And people will say the civil service is overfloated. Or some of the people that are saying civil service is overfloated, they don't have access to what is inside, what is happening properly within the civil service. That's my thing.
All right. Thank you very much for your take.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for your intervention. And on that note, I would also like to say thank you very much to Lawrence Umoite for taking the time to go through these headlines with me.
Thank you, Stanley.
Well, the Super Citizen at Sunrise will continue after a brief break. And then we'll be looking at brain drain in Nigeria's health sector. How do we halt the situation? Do not go away. We will be right back.